It was a room made entirely of amber and gold, glowing like sunlight frozen in stone. People called it the eighth wonder of the world. It was worth a fortune almost beyond counting, and in the chaos of the Second World War, this priceless treasure vanished completely and has never been seen since. For decades, treasure hunters, governments, and obsessives have searched for it. Some who chased it are said to have died strange deaths. This is the story of the Amber Room. Amber is not a stone. It is the fossilized resin of ancient trees, hardened over millions of years into a warm, glowing golden material, precious and rare. In the early 1700s, craftsmen in the Kingdom of Prussia created something no one had ever attempted. An entire chamber, its walls covered in intricately carved amber panels. The panels shimmered in shades of honey and gold, decorated with mirrors, gilded carvings, and candlelight that set the whole room aglow. It was breathtaking and staggeringly valuable. The Prussian king presented this masterpiece as a gift to the Russian Tsar, Peter the Great, sealing a bond between two powerful nations with a treasure of unimaginable worth. The panels were carried to Russia and eventually installed in a magnificent palace near the capital, where Russian craftsmen expanded and perfected them into their final dazzling form. Enlarged with even more amber and gold, the finished room covered the walls of a great hall. It was said that when the candles were lit, the whole chamber seemed to burn with a soft golden fire. Visitors were left speechless. It was more than decoration. It was a symbol of imperial power and wealth, a wonder that few in the world would ever be lucky enough to see. For 2 centuries, the Amber Room glowed in that palace, surviving revolutions and the fall of empires, a jewel of Russian heritage passed down through generations. Then came the Second World War, and with it, a threat unlike any the treasure had faced before. In 1941, German forces invaded the Soviet Union and drove toward the old imperial capital. As the enemy advanced, the palace staff faced an agonizing decision. The Amber Room was too famous to fall into enemy hands, but it was also terribly fragile. They tried to move it, but the ancient amber was brittle and began to crack as they worked. Fearing they would destroy the treasure by removing it, they made a desperate choice. They attempted to hide the room in plain sight, covering the glowing amber walls with ordinary wallpaper, hoping the invaders would simply pass it by. The disguise did not work. When German forces reached the palace, they knew exactly what lay beneath. The Amber Room was one of the most coveted art treasures in the world, and they had come for it. Expert crews were brought in. Within a matter of hours, the invaders dismantled the entire chamber, packing the amber panels into crates for transport. The treasure was carried west, out of Russia, and installed in a castle in the city of Königsberg, a German stronghold on the Baltic coast. There, for a time, it was put back on display. For the occupiers, it was a prize of war, a symbol of conquest. The glowing room that had honored a Russian Tsar now adorned the halls of those who had stolen it. But the tide of the war was turning. The same forces that had seized the Amber Room were now being driven back, and the city that held it was about to become a battlefield. As the war closed in on Königsberg, the castle and the city around it came under heavy bombing and then siege. Fire and destruction swept through the ancient streets. Somewhere in that chaos, in the final months of the war, the Amber Room disappeared, and from that moment, its trail goes cold. When the fighting ended and the ruins were searched, the glowing panels were gone. No crates, no amber, no clear record of where the treasure had been taken. It had simply vanished. And so began one of the greatest treasure hunts in history, a search that has consumed generations and has never reached a certain end. The theories about the Amber Room's fate fall into a few haunting possibilities. The first, and perhaps the most likely, is also the most heartbreaking. Perhaps the Amber Room was never moved at all in those final days. Perhaps it was still inside the castle when the bombs and fires came, and the ancient flammable amber simply burned. If that is true, then the eighth wonder of the world was reduced to ash in the ruins of a burning castle, and there is nothing left to find, just smoke and a memory. But many refuse to believe it. They point out that amber is valuable and that the occupiers were experts at hiding looted art. Surely, they argue, such a treasure would have been protected. This leads to the second great theory, that in the last desperate weeks, the crates of amber were secretly moved out of the castle and hidden away, waiting to be recovered. Perhaps they were sealed in an underground bunker, or buried in a mine, or walled up in a forgotten tunnel somewhere beneath the shifting borders of post-war Europe. If so, the Amber Room might still exist, intact, crated in the dark, sitting silently in some hidden chamber that no one has yet found. A third theory sends the treasure to sea. In the final chaos, huge numbers of people and cargo were evacuated from the Baltic coast by ship fleeing the advancing front. Some believe the amber room was loaded onto one of these vessels, and several of those ships were sunk, taking thousands of souls and their cargo to the bottom of the cold sea. If the amber went down with one of them, then the treasure lies scattered on the seabed, entombed in a sunken wreck, guarded by the dark and the depths. Each theory has its believers, and each has been chased with enormous effort. Over the decades, the search for the amber room became almost an obsession. Investigators, historians, and fortune seekers pored over wartime records, interrogated old witnesses, and dug into bunkers, mines, and cellars across Europe. Again and again, a promising lead would surface. A rumor of crates hidden in a particular mine, a deathbed confession, a map, a memory, a whispered location, and again, the searches came up empty. The amber room stayed hidden, always seeming to be just beyond the reach of those who hunted it. Along the way, the search gathered a darker reputation. Several people connected to the hunt for the amber room died in sudden or mysterious circumstances. A man who claimed to know where it was hidden died before he could reveal the location. Others linked to the search met untimely ends, feeding whispers of an amber room curse. In truth, these deaths were most likely coincidence, the ordinary tragedies of a search that spanned decades and involved many people. But the legend of the curse only grew. It added a final layer of mystique to a treasure that already seemed to punish those who longed for it, always promising, never delivering. Fragments have surfaced over the years. A stone mosaic and a small chest, both once part of the room's decoration, turned up long after the war in private hands. These pieces proved that at least some of the amber room had survived the fall of Königsberg and been carried away. But they were only scraps of the whole, and they led no further. They were tantalizing proof that the treasure had not simply been destroyed on the spot, and yet they brought searchers no closer to the missing panels themselves. Faced with a treasure that would not be found, Russia made a remarkable decision. If the original amber room was lost, they would build it again. Over more than 2 decades, master craftsmen painstakingly recreated the entire chamber from old photographs and descriptions, carving tons of new amber by hand. The reconstructed amber room now glows once more in its palace, a stunning achievement that lets visitors witness the wonder the world had lost. But it is a copy. Beautiful as it is, the reconstruction cannot answer the question that still hangs over the story. Where is the original? What truly became of those 200-year-old panels? Somewhere, perhaps, they lie buried in a collapsed mine, or sealed in a forgotten bunker, or scattered across the floor of the Baltic Sea, waiting in the dark. Or perhaps they are gone forever, burned to nothing in the fires of a dying city, and the greatest treasure hunt in history has been chasing a ghost all along. They called it the 8th wonder of the world, a room of frozen sunlight and gold. And then war swallowed it whole. And to this day, no one knows if the amber room still glows somewhere in the dark or vanished from the earth forever.